The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Let's talk about central bank digital currencies, because when you're talking about, just going in our earlier conversation, you're talking about the Fed just, opening up their own, the repo market basically becomes the Fed. So your counterparty is always the Federal Reserve, and that just creates an immense amount of moral hazard. What happens if we all have accounts with the Fed, we meaning the entities and the individuals in the real economy? Therefore, the Fed can get around the commercial banking system, and by lending and creating dollars, basically, and using those bank reserves as legal tender, as Dr. Lacey Hunt would say. So they basically get around the commercial banking system. They can lend to whomever they want and however much they want to lend. What happens when that happens?
The best case scenario would be much worse stagflation. You would start to get a lot more consumer spending. But really, I think, George, a lot of this central bank digital currencies, a lot of it has to do with China, using China as the model, because China is the furthest along with the crypto Yuan. They're already testing it in major cities so people can spend it on their smartphone. I believe that there's also an expiration date, but these central bank digital currencies, a lot of them, even though China is the furthest along, they're still, at least in my opinion, 3 to 5 years away, because they're not scaling the level of testing, the level of scaling. They're not handling enormous amounts of payments yet. So even China in the major cities, they are doing transactions with them in the major cities in China. They're not handling, say, billions of dollars per day in cross-border settlement. They're not being used for global trade. So these central bank digital currencies are still at least a couple years away.
So there's a network there that needs to be created, right?
More testing and then it's scaling. So there's a scaling issue that has to be accomplished, but China's the furthest along. What worries me the most, and is and is even more Orwellian and nefarious. So these governments, as part of Stagflate tax lie, they would also, in the European Union, which supposedly 40% of the European Union economy is outside the banking system and is underground and all cash, because the VAT taxes, all the corruption and taxes in the European Union, especially all the different VAT taxes, value-added taxes, are so high that a lot of people do business in the European Union outside the banking system to avoid VAT taxes. So they pay all cash, and a cashless society negates that. So basically, governments can tax every single economic transaction. But the other part of this that really worries me is then it couples really, really well, and from a Orwellian government control standpoint, with social credit scores.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
So this pairs, and if people are wondering, like, well, where did you get that from? China's already doing it. So even though China doesn't have full central bank digital currency at the scale yet, China does have basically a voluntary cashless society where a lot of people pay on their smartphones with QR codes with WeChat Pay and AliChat Pay. And there already is an integration there with their social credit score. So if you are in mainland China and you're buying a lot of foreign goods, say you're buying American whiskey or Japanese porn, or they catch you with your well, that's a no-no too, George. That's in mainland China, that's a no-no. Or you're signing up for a VPN, a virtual private network. You get caught buying those things, or you sign up for Wall Street for Main Street's Patreon, or you subscribe to your George Gammon Rebel Capitalist. I'm sure the phrase Rebel Capitalist is probably not welcome to by the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
So you sign up for these things, and you're looking at getting your social credit score docked or worse. There are worse things that can happen than just getting penalized with the social credit score. You might get a knock on the door. You might get a visit. You might get a bunch of other. They can stop you from going on from traveling there. They can make it so you don't go on trains or planes there. They can shut that down too. Like, they do no-fly lists there for minor violations. They put you on a no-fly list with the social credit score there for minor violations, and that might be coming to the U.S.
Yeah, and just so people are following what we're talking about here, when we're saying the central bank digital currency, the main thing there is that they can control not only do they know everything, they know every transaction, it's Big Brother stuff, but they also can control lending. They can lend directly into the real economy without having to go through the banking system. So if you were, let's say your optimal credit social score was 10 and you didn't wear a mask outside one day, so then it drops to a 5. Well, the next time you go to Jerome Powell or central banker XYZ for your home mortgage, you're going to have to pay a higher interest rate. Or it gets even more draconian. What Jason was saying is you get a knock on the door and it turns into like this, 1920s mob type scenario.
Or you get a text message on your phone saying that this is your one warning for not wearing your mask, saying that they're going to put a tax, then an extra tax for you not being a responsible citizen on all your economic transactions. Or you get a warning saying they could shut down your debit card or credit card so you can't pay for food or groceries or gasoline.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Look, I wish we weren't headed there, but unfortunately, it looks like once the central bank digital currencies are scaled up, it looks like that's what governments want.
So basically what you're saying is your time horizon isn't tomorrow. It's not something to lose sleep over. It's maybe 3 years, 5 years out, but the probability of this coming to fruition, in your opinion, is extremely high.
Yes, it is very high. And I think cryptocurrencies and the altcoins are going to be allowed as a Trojan horse to keep going up. So in the short term, yes, we're going to have every 3 to 4 years, Bitcoin and the other major cryptos now go through these very volatile boom and bust cycles. Okay, I've been covering crypto now for, I think, since 2012 or 2013, for a very, very long time. And just watching these things, I've been covering Bitcoin since it went to $1,000 the first time. And these things go through very volatile booms and bust cycles. But I think the government, even though governments want to tax crypto more and China's trying to get rid of it, by the way, a lot of the Chinese Communist Party members, they use Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. They just don't want the regular citizens to have it. Yeah, they use it. They use it for money laundering. They use it for speculation. So it's just they don't want the citizens to have it. People in DC do the same. The politicians here in DC, a lot of them own Bitcoin. I've been going to the DC Blockchain Summit. I know the creator of the Chamber of Digital Commerce here, Perry Ann Boring. I've known her for many years. So I get free admission to the DC Blockchain Summit, which is the annual crypto conference here. And I've listened to speeches, George, from people at the U.S. Treasury Department, heads of U.S. Treasury, the higher-ups for years now, higher-ups at the Securities and Exchange Commission, higher-ups at the Commodities Future Trading Commission, admit they own Bitcoin, admit they love it, but they want to regulate it more. They want to potentially tax it more. Now, do these same laws and taxes, will they apply to the people in power? Because the people in power abuse power, they lie, cheat, and steal, they're corrupt, and they think that they're above the law.
Right. So have you done any research on Tether?
No.
Okay.
I've been looking at your stuff and the guy from Gold Telegraph, so that's something that I probably won't. I'm not going to provide any value there, but I will just say that I think crypto is going to be allowed after. It's going to keep going through volatile booms and busts, but until central bank digital currencies are more scaled, they've proven that they can do cross-border digital settlements. And really, there's only tiny little programs right now at the Bank of International Settlements with a couple governments. They're only doing tiny little cross-border settlements right now with central bank digital currencies. It's nowhere near the amount. There's many, many billions of dollars per day in global trade transactions. We're nowhere near that.